Enggak pembukaan ya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning everyone. Today we will presentate about language and culture. Sebelumnya perkenalkan, kami dari kelompok 8 terdiri dari saya sendiri Adimas, Adristi, Faiqur, Rizal, Hanif, Rahma, dan Zulfikar. Next. Masuk ke materi pertama, yaitu what. What is language? Language is a system of speech, manual, or written symbols that humans use to communicate. It enables us to communicate, interpret, and play. Language helps us to share with others and identify ourselves. And then what is culture? Culture comes from the Latin word "collere," which means to produce something out of the earth in specific ways. Our history is what brings us closer together. Culture is often used to identify or separate people into groups. Western culture, Eastern culture, and African culture, for example. However, much like language, everybody has their own distinct culture. Even though two people living in similar situations will share characteristics. However, they are unable to share the same cultural experiences or ideas.
Next is why. Why is language and culture correlated? Language and culture is correlated because you can't learn one without first knowing the other. Language is related to all features of human life in society, and comprehension of the surrounding culture is key to learning a language. Language also allows the development and evolution of cultural values. Next. Next is how. How is language and culture correlating? Culture is a fuzzy set of attitudes, beliefs, behavioral convention, basic assumption, and values that are shared by a group of people and that influence each member's behavior and each member's interpretations of the meanings of other people's behavior. And language is the medium for expressing and embodying other phenomena. It expresses the values, beliefs, and meanings which members of a given society share by virtue of their socialization into it. Next. Language also refers to object peculiar to a given culture as evidenced by proper names which embody those objects. Byron posited that a love of bread evokes a specific culture of objects in British usage unless a conscious effort is made to empty it of that preference and introduce a new one. So we can conclude that language is part of culture, and through it we can express culture, beliefs, and values, and that the specific usage of a given word are peculiar to language and its relationship with culture.
Example of culture influence language. There are many ways in which culture influences language. The first example would be words are considered taboo and avoided at premise. For example, in Victorian England, sexuality was taboo in polite speech, and therefore terms potentially linked to sexuality or nakedness were not used in polite conversation. From a research about politeness strategies on one of activity in Batak Toba ethnic prove that someone's social culture affect on how they use such languages. People from higher stake of social culture pyramid could speak more politely than people from the below ones. Next. Another example, in Indonesia, there's such thing that differentiate between nasi, beras, and padi. Meanwhile, take a look at another country, for example, United States. They don't have specific meaning for them. In US, they only say rice. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, we have three different names for it. And it builds because of the culture itself. People in our country eat nasi as their daily meal. And our country also stick with the agriculture. That's why there are also things named nasi, beras, and padi. Meanwhile, on the other country, they call it only as rice because they don't have the same culture like us. It's proof that culture influence language. From culture that we have or we've been doing all this time, we'll build such languages that might be different with the other country that has different culture. Next.
And now there is an example of language influence culture. So the first example is slang. Slang is defined as very informal usage in vocabulary, an idiom that is characteristically more metaphorical, playful, elliptical, vivid, and ephemeral than ordinary language. Slang can also be described as non-standard words or phrases, lexical innovations, which tend to originate in subcultures within a society. Every language has slang, and sometimes nobody knows where some slang words or phrases come from. Sometimes we don't even realize we are using slang. For example, in the US, one of the most common slang phrases is "What's up?" It means "What is new in your life?" But people from the US have been using this phrase for so long that it is not even considered slang anymore, and became a habit. A habit. The habit itself becomes such a culture, and this is a proof that language influences culture. Language made something new or bring evolution and development to the culture. And another example can be seen by ourselves. The previous slide, please. Another example can be seen on ourselves. If we learn foreign language like Korean, Japanese, or English itself, we will also follow the culture that brought along with the language. For example, if we learn Japanese, we will also acknowledging the Japanese culture, and it will affect on how we behave on daily basis. For example, we will follow some behavior that usually Japan people does, and it became our culture. It is because the language will also contains the culture from the country where it came from.
The next is paralanguage. Paralanguage is the non-lexical portion of any culture's language. It's broad word that encompasses things like body language and voice pitch or sound. Depending on where you grow up, the paralanguage will be different. You pick up on these behaviors, expression, and intonation from the people around us. This is why while talking paralanguage can trigger miscommunication between ethnic groups. Example, miscommunication. Jadi contohnya seperti orang Batak, itu kan budayanya kayak bicaranya keras-keras gitu kan. Ada bicaranya keras, tinggi gitu. Jadinya bagi orang Jawa bisa mengiranya orang ini marah-marah. Dengan orang Jawa itu kan budayanya kan berbicara secara halus. Nah, disitulah bisa menimbulkan jadinya miskomunikasi. Next.
So the conclusion is that language and culture is like dua mata koin, yaitu bisa dilihat dari kedua sisi yang sama-sama menginfluensi satu sama lain. Mungkin sekian presentasi yang dapat kami sampaikan. Kurang lebihnya mohon maaf. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.